Welcome to Talk Treatises, the place where philosophy, history, and classic literature collide.
Hello again.
We are back at the table, stacks of notes in front of us, ready to pull apart another text that shaped the world we live in.
And this one it's a bit different.
Today we are doing something a little different. Usually we look at a specific event or, a scientific breakthrough. Today we are looking at a ghost.
A ghost, I like that.
We're looking at a moral system that officially doesn't exist anymore, yet somehow it still haunts the way an entire nation and arguably the modern business world operates.
It's a ghost that carries a sword.
Yeah.
And it is a ghost that absolutely refuses to be exorcised.
Exactly. We are tackling Bushido, the soul of Japan, by Inazo Nitobe. Now, before you think this is just going to be an hour of us talking about katana mechanics or samurai movies, we need to frame this correctly.
Yes, that's crucial.
This isn't a book about fighting. It's not a manual on how to swing a blade.
No. In fact, fighting is almost secondary to the text. This is a book about why you fight. And I think more importantly, how you live when you aren't fighting.
Right. It's about the spaces between the battles.
The character you build in peacetime.
We have a massive stack of notes here because this book, published way back in 1900, is so dense. It's a bridge between two worlds that were just colliding at the turn of the 20th century. So give us the overview before we get into the weeds. What is the core mission of this deep dive?
The core mission is translation. And I don't mean linguistic translation. Nitobe wrote this in perfect, beautiful English. I mean cultural translation.
Right.
In 1900, Japan had just burst onto the world stage. They had opened their borders after centuries of isolation. They were industrializing at this breakneck pace. And the West was looking at them with a mix of fascination and, frankly, fear.
Right, a kind of suspicion.
Deep suspicion. The West looked at Japan and saw a country with no dominant religious dogma, no Christianity, no single church dictating morality. And the Western assumption was, well, it was simple.
If you don't have religion, you are a barbarian. You have no moral compass.
Exactly that. The prevailing thought was, if you don't have the 10 Commandments or, the fear of hell, what stops you from murdering your neighbor and taking his stuff?
It's a genuine question from their perspective.
A very genuine question. And Nitobe wrote this book to answer that specific fear. He argues that Japan has a moral system just as rigorous, if not more rigorous, than Christianity. It just wasn't written in the Bible.
It was written on the fleshly tablets of the heart. I love that phrase.
It's a great line. He called it Bushido.
So let's start with the origin story of the book itself, because it's almost like a scene from a movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
This wasn't written in a dojo in Kyoto or a temple in Tokyo.
No, not at all.
Nitobe wrote this in Pennsylvania.
Malvern, Pennsylvania, to be exact. He was part of that first generation of Japanese intellectuals who traveled abroad to explain their country to the world. But the inciting incident, the real spark, happened in Belgium.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So, Nitobe is staying with a distinguished Belgian legal scholar, a man named Monsieur de Lavallee. This is the late 19th century, so you have to picture two gentlemen in, proper coats walking through the European countryside.
Having one of those very high-minded Victorian conversations.
Precisely. About the state of the world, religion, politics, the whole thing. And de Lavallee asks him a simple question, a very simple question.
What sort of religious instruction do you give to your children in Japanese schools?
A completely standard question for a European. In Europe at the time, education and religious instruction were practically inseparable.
You couldn't imagine one without the other.
Exactly. And Nitobe, being honest, replies, "We don't give any."
And the reaction?
De Lavallee stops dead in his tracks. He is stunned. He practically gasps, "No religion. How do you impart moral education?" To him, that sentence was a complete paradox. It was like saying, "We don't use fuel, but the car drives."
It just didn't compute.
He couldn't compute how a society could function without religious dogma being drilled into children from day one.
That moment really shook Nitobe, didn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't just a casual disagreement. It was like an existential challenge to his whole culture.
It haunted him.
Yeah.
He said he felt like he couldn't give a good answer in the moment. He went home and he just started introspecting. He asked himself, okay, I know right from wrong. I know I shouldn't steal. I know I should be loyal. Where did I learn that?
It wasn't in a sermon?
No.
It wasn't in a textbook?
Not at all. He realized it was atmospheric.
It was just the air he breathed.
It's the stories his mother told him. It's the way his father held himself. It was this collective unwritten code that pervaded Japanese life. He realized the source was this feudal knighthood code, Bushido.
And that's the book. That's the mission.
So he decided to write this book to explain that sealed volume of Japanese morality to the West.
Okay, so let's define the subject. We hear the word Bushido thrown around in pop culture a lot. Usually it's associated with, guys screaming and swinging katanas.
Yeah, that's the shallow version.
But what does the word actually mean?
Well, if we break it down etymologically, it's quite literal. It consists of 3 characters. Bu means military.
Okay.
Shi means knight or warrior. Specifically a scholar warrior, not just a brute.
A thinking warrior.
Right. And Du means the way, so military knight ways.
The way of the fighting knight.
Or, as Nitobe translates it, the precepts of knighthood. It is the noblesse oblige of the warrior class. The idea that with great power comes great responsibility.
But here is the critical distinction that Nitobe makes right at the start, and this is where most Westerners get tripped up.
This is the key.
Bushido is not a written code. It isn't the Magna Carta. It isn't the 10 Commandments. You can't go to a library in feudal Japan and pull down the Book of Bushido and look up Rule 4, Section B.
It doesn't exist. It was never codified.
So how do you enforce a law that isn't written down? How does that even work?
You enforce it through social pressure, through family tradition, and above all, through shame. It's an unwritten law. Nitobe uses this beautiful metaphor for it. He compares Bushido to the cherry blossom.
The sakura.
Yes. He says Bushido is like the wild cherry blossom. It is indigenous to the soil of Japan. You can't really grow it the same way elsewhere. It is beautiful, but it's also incredibly fragile.
Fragile? That seems counterintuitive.
Well, think about it. A gust of wind can scatter the blossoms. It isn't a monument of stone like the pyramids. It's a living, breathing, dying thing.
That fragility is interesting. We usually think of samurai as these rock-hard stoics, but he characterizes the philosophy itself as something delicate.
Because it depends on the spirit of the people to keep it alive. If the spirit changes, the code it vanishes. It doesn't have a text to preserve it. It relies entirely on the human carrier to exist.
So if it's not written down, what is it made of? Nitobe spends a good chunk of the beginning of the book acting like a chef breaking down a recipe. He says Bushido isn't just one flavor, it's a blend.
A syncretic fabric. The Japanese mind has always been very good at taking different systems of thought, even ones that seem contradictory on the surface, and weaving them together into something new.
And he identifies 3 main sources.
3 ingredients of the soul, if you will.
Let's unpack those. Ingredient A, Buddhism.
Right. And specifically, the Zen aspect of Buddhism. This gave Bushido its spirit of danger.
That sounds like an action movie title, The Spirit of Danger.
It does, but it's actually about the opposite of action. It's about the internal state. Buddhism provided the sense of calm, trust, and fate. It taught the samurai to submit to the inevitable.
So if death is coming, you don't fight the idea of death.
You accept it. You maintain stoic composure.
This is where we get that image of the warrior sitting calmly before a battle, maybe meditating or writing a poem.
Exactly. Zen was the method. It taught them to reach zones of thought beyond words, to put oneself in harmony with the absolute. Look, if you are a warrior, you are dealing with death every single day. If you are terrified of it, you can't function.
You'd be useless.
Useless. Buddhism gave them the metaphysical armor to stand in the face of danger and not blink. It taught them that life is an illusion, so losing it isn't the end of the world. It gave them that crucial detachment.
Okay, so Buddhism provides the calm, the internal shield. What about ingredient B, Shintoism?
The native religion of Japan. This provided the spirit of loyalty. If Buddhism is universal and detached, Shinto is intensely local and attached. It's all about the land, the ancestors, the emperor.
He mentions the mirror in Shinto shrines here. I found that fascinating.
It's a great image, isn't it?
It really is.
In a Christian church, you see a cross. In Buddhist temple, you see a statue of Buddha. But in a Shinto shrine, you often just see a plain mirror.
Why a mirror?
Nitobe explains that this typifies the human heart. When your heart is placid and clear, it reflects the image of the deity. So when you stand before the shrine to worship, you see your own reflection.
Know thyself.
It's an act of introspection. But it's also about the soil. Shinto teaches that the country itself is the sacred abode of the gods. It's not just dirt and rocks, it's ancestral memory. This is where the intense patriotism comes from.
So you have this tension.
A very powerful, very creative tension. Buddhism tells you that life is an illusion. Shinto tells you that this land and this emperor are sacred and worth dying for.
Which is a powerful, if slightly contradictory, combination. One says nothing matters. The other says this specific island matters more than anything.
And that tension creates the samurai mindset. You fight for the land, which is Shinto, with a detachment of someone who doesn't fear death, which is Buddhist.
And then we have ingredient C, Confucianism.
The spirit of ethics. If Buddhism handles the soul and Shinto handles the heart, Confucianism handles the relationships. It provided the strict ethical doctrines, the famous 5 moral relations.
Master and servant, father and son.
Husband and wife, older and younger brother, and friend and friend.
This is the structure of society. This is the blueprint for how everyone relates to everyone else.
Precisely. And Nitobe notes that Bushido was very influenced by Mencius, who was a follower of Confucius, but a bit more democratic.
A bit spicy, you said.
He was a bit spicy. His theories were sometimes considered dangerous to the social order because he flirted with the idea that leadership depends on merit and benevolence, not just bloodline. If a ruler is bad, Mencius argued, the people have a right to be unhappy about it.
Which is a radical idea in a feudal system.
Very. And there's a big emphasis here on the difference between knowledge and wisdom. This is core to Bushido.
Right. They weren't impressed by Trivia Night Champion.
Not at all. Bushido made light of knowledge for knowledge's sake. They didn't care if you could recite an encyclopedia. They cared if you could assimilate what you knew into your character. It's the influence of Wang Yang Ming. To know and to act are one.
If you know something is right but you don't do it, you don't actually know it.
You just have the data. You haven't internalized it. To the samurai, the intellectual who couldn't act was just a book-smelling sot.
I love that insult. Book-smelling sot. It's so visceral. Okay, so we have the ingredients. We have the calm of Buddhism, the loyalty of Shinto, and the ethical structure of Confucianism. Now, let's look at the result. The book moves into what I call the anatomy of a samurai, the virtues.
And he starts with the backbone, rectitude or justice.
He calls it the bone that gives firmness and stature.
Which is such a physical metaphor. Without it, the head cannot rest on the spine. It's a visceral definition. Rectitude is the power of deciding on a course of conduct in accordance with reason, dying when it is right to die, striking when it is right to strike.
It's very binary. There's no gray area.
Very little. But he also talks about how this virtue got corrupted over time. He brings up this word giri.
Giri? That sounds complicated.
Giri is a famously complex term. It translates roughly to right reason or duty. Originally, it was just the application of rectitude. It was the ought in, I ought to do this.
So the practical side of justice.
Right. But over time, as feudal society became more artificial and rigid, giri degenerated. It became what he calls a monstrous misnomer.
It became peer pressure.
That's a great way to put it. It became social propriety. Doing things not because they were morally right, but because you were afraid of what people would say if you didn't.
The social obligation.
It became the excuse for things like a father selling his daughter to pay debts, saying, I have a giri to my creditors. Nitobe is very critical of this. He says true rectitude is about moral courage, not just covering your social bases.
Speaking of courage, that's the next virtue. But he makes a very specific distinction here. It's not just being fearless, is it?
No, not at all. Courage is only doing what is right. Confucius said perceiving what is right and doing it not argues lack of courage. So the inverse is true, but rushing into danger for no good reason.
That's just foolishness.
It's a dog's death, an unworthy death.
I was struck by the description of how they trained this in children. It sounds intense.
Spartan is the word he uses, and it absolutely fits. The drilling of the nerves. Samurai parents would send their young children on errands to execution grounds or graveyards at night.
Alone. In the dark, to the place where heads were literally chopped off.
To leave a mark on a trunkless head to prove they were there, it sounds horrific to modern ears, almost abusive.
It does.
But the goal wasn't to torture the child. It was to inoculate them, to make the nerves steel. They believed that if you expose the child to the macabre early on, fear would lose its grip on them.
But the ultimate expression of courage isn't fighting, it's composure.
It's a great concept. It implies a surplus of mental space.
A surplus.
The idea is that if you are truly brave, you are calm. You aren't frantic. Your mind isn't totally consumed by the danger. He uses the example of Otodoken, a great warrior. He was assassinated, pierced with a spear.
Okay.
And as he was dying, his assassin recited the first half of a poem, a couplet about how sad it is to die. And Otodoken, with a spear in his guts, Finished the poem.
No way.
He completed the cup.
That is the ultimate mic drop.
It's incredible. It proves that the pain and the fear of death didn't occupy his whole mind. He still had room for poetry. That is true courage in the Bushido sense. Not screaming, but composing verse.
But courage without a heart is just brutality. So the next virtue has to be benevolence.
The feeling of distress, love, magnanimity. Nitobe quotes the saying, "The bravest are the tenderest."
Bushi no nasake.
The tenderness of a warrior. This is crucial because it saves the samurai from just being a killing machine. Mercy wasn't seen as weakness, it was seen as a proof of power.
How so?
You can only truly be merciful if you have the power to kill but choose to save. A weak person forgiving someone who is stronger than them? That's not mercy, it's just necessity. Mercy is a choice made from a position of strength.
And we have to tell the story of Kumagaya here, because this story seems to capture the absolute tragedy and beauty of this balance.
It is the archetypal Bushido tragedy. It takes place at the Battle of Sumanaura. Kumagaya is a veteran warrior, a grim, hardened fighter.
He's seen it all.
He's seen it all. And he overpowers an enemy soldier. He rips off the helmet to take the head, and he sees a boy, a 16-year-old, fair, beardless face.
The same age as his own son.
Exactly. The exact same age. And Kumagaya freezes. The feeling of distress hits him like a physical blow. He wants to let the boy go. He tells him, "Run, go back to your mother."
But the boy refuses.
The boy's a samurai too. He has his own honor to think of. He says, "No, take my head for the honor of us both." And meanwhile, Kumagaya sees more of his own troops approaching. He realizes if he lets the boy go, the others will just catch him and butcher him, probably in a much more humiliating way.
So to save the boy from ignominy,
he kills him. He delivers the coup de grace while weeping. It is a mercy kill in the most tragic sense possible. And the aftermath is just as important. Kumagaya doesn't go celebrate the victory. He renounces war.
he quits.
He shaves his head and becomes a priest, spending the rest of his life praying for the soul of that boy he killed.
It's heartbreaking, but it illustrates that benevolence isn't always a happy ending. Sometimes it's a choice between two tragedies.
But it shows that the heart was alive beneath the armor. A samurai who wasn't a poet or a musician, who couldn't feel the pathos of things, was considered incomplete, a brute.
Which leads us to politeness. Now, this is something Japan is famous for, even today, but Nitobe says it's more than just manners.
It's the outward manifestation of sympathetic regard for the feelings of others. But there's a fascinating angle he takes here that I'd never considered. Efficiency.
Politeness is efficient.
Politeness is the economy of force.
How is bowing efficient? It seems to add time to everything.
Think about the tea ceremony. To a Westerner, it looks slow and ritualistic. But Nitobe argues that the prescribed movements are actually the most graceful and therefore the most efficient way to move. It's about power and repose. If you are flailing around, you are wasting energy. If you follow the prescribed form, you conserve energy and achieve the goal with the least amount of friction. Politeness smooths social interactions, reducing wasted emotional and physical energy.
So the impeccable manners are a form of discipline, a way of optimizing social energy.
Yes, and he uses this to explain those awfully funny Japanese customs that confuse foreigners, like depreciating your own gift. You give someone a masterpiece and say, "This is a piece of rubbish."
Right. Please accept this worthless thing I found.
Nitobe explains, it's not a lie. It's a shift in focus. The logic is, you are so respectable, so worthy, that nothing I could give you, even this priceless masterpiece, is good enough for you. It's focusing on the spirit of the recipient, not the material value of the object.
That makes so much more sense. It's a form of verbal bowing.
A perfect way to put it.
And that connects to the next virtue. Veracity, truthfulness.
Bushi no Ichigan, the word of a samurai. Nitobe claims that samurai didn't need written pledges. Their word was their bond. If you doubted a samurai's word, it was grounds for a duel to the death.
Lying was a form of cowardice.
The ultimate cowardice. But he has to rid us of a stereotype here. Even in 1900, there was a perception in the West that Japanese merchants were, let's say, less than honest.
He tackles this head on.
He does. He admits it. He says, yes, the Japanese merchant class had a bad reputation for a long time. But he explains why. Under the feudal system, society was rigidly stratified. Knight, tiller, mechanic, merchant.
Merchants were at the very bottom.
The lowest of the four classes. So the best blood, the most honorable people went to war and administration. The cunning, as he puts it, went to trade.
And Bushido itself despised money.
It taught that money was filthy lucre. A samurai was supposed to be ignorant of coin values. So the merchant class was socially ostracized and operated outside the code of honor, Nitobe argues. Call a man a thief and he will steal. If you treat a whole class of people as rogues, they will develop a rogue morality.
It's a fascinating social analysis. He's not making excuses, he's providing context.
Exactly. He contrasts this with the samurai, where truth was identical to courage. Lying was seen as a weakness, a flaw in your character.
And that links to honor.
The sense of shame. And Jishin, this was the primary educator for a child. You didn't behave because God was watching. You behaved because to be shamed was worse than death.
He has a great line for this.
Dishonor is like a scar on a tree, which time, instead of effacing, only helps to enlarge.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's this idea that a mistake, an act of dishonor, isn't something you can move past. It grows with you. It becomes your defining feature.
But he admits this could go too far, right?
Oh, absolutely. It could lead to morbidity. You get stories of samurai killing people over the most trivial slights, like a flea jumping on them, because they interpreted it as a profound insult to their honor.
That's taking it to an extreme.
It's the excess of virtue, as he calls it. But the core idea was a vivid, constant consciousness of personal dignity.
And finally, the keystone, loyalty.
This is the distinctive feature of feudal morality. This is where it diverges most sharply from, say, its Chinese Confucian roots. In China, filial piety is first. Your duty is to your parents.
But not in Japan.
In Japan, loyalty to the sovereign or lord takes precedence over family, over everything.
And we have another heavy story here, the story of Michizane. This one is really tough for modern listeners to process.
It is. It confronts the modern listener with a very, very alien value system. So Michizane is an exiled lord. His enemy wants to exterminate his family line. He demands the head of Michizane's young son. A former retainer, a schoolmaster named Genzo, is hiding the son in his school.
So Genzo is trapped. The army's at the door. He can't fight them all.
He's in an impossible position.
Yeah.
But he can't give up his lord's son. That would be the ultimate betrayal. So a new boy arrives at the school that morning, a boy the same age with a noble look, and Genzo makes a terrible decision.
He kills the new student.
He kills the new student, he cuts off his head and presents it to the officials, hoping they will be fooled and think it's the lord's son.
And it works. The officials take the head and leave. The lord's son is safe, but Genzo has just murdered an innocent child.
It gets worse.
How could it get worse?
It turns out the new student was the son of Genzo's own best friend. And the friends sent his son there specifically to be the sacrifice. He knew what was happening.
The father sacrificed his own son to save the son of his lord.
Yes. And when the father finds out the ruse worked, he doesn't weep for his dead child. He rejoices. He says, "My son has proved of service to his lord."
That is horrifying. Utterly horrifying from our perspective.
To us, yes, Nitobe acknowledges that. He compares it to the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac, a test of faith. But to the samurai mind, the family interest is one and inseparable. Sacrificing one's own flesh and blood for the Lord is the ultimate vicarious death. It's the supreme proof that you value the code more than your own genetic survival.
It's a terrifying kind of loyalty. But Nitobe insists it wasn't just blind obedience, was it?
Right. This is a very important clarification he makes.
Yeah.
True loyalty wasn't just being a yes man or a sycophant. A true samurai would oppose his lord when the lord was wrong. He would remonstrate with him.
He would argue.
Argue, plead, try to correct the course. And if the lord wouldn't listen,
the samurai would commit suicide.
Right.
That's an intense form of protest. I am killing myself to show you how serious I am about you being wrong.
That is the level of intensity we are dealing with. It's loyalty that includes a failsafe of self-destruction to prevent tyranny. It's a loyalty to the office of the Lord, to the good of the domain, not just to the man himself.
Which brings us to part 3, the institutions, the practices that made this philosophy concrete. And the first one is simply self-control, the Stoic mask.
The repression of emotion. No sniffling, no groaning. And the famous Japanese smile.
I found this really insightful. He explains why Japanese people might smile while telling you about a tragedy. I think a lot of Westerners misinterpret this.
Massively. A Westerner might see a Japanese person smiling while talking about their dead husband and think, wait, are they happy? Are they unfeeling? Nitobe says, absolutely not. The smile is a mask.
But why a smile?
It is an effort to regain balance.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's a form of politeness. It's saying, I will not burden you with my pain. I will keep the social atmosphere pleasant, even if I am breaking inside.
It's altruistic stoicism.
Exactly. It's shielding the other person from your sorrow. Your grief is your own to carry. It is not a weight to be placed on others.
And then the institution that everyone knows but very few understand, suicide, seppuku, or harakiri.
Nitobe is very precise here. He prefers the word seppuku, which is the more formal term. It was a legal and ceremonial institution. It wasn't just killing yourself because you were depressed. It was a ritual.
So why the belly? Why harakiri, which literally means belly cutting?
The anatomy of the soul. There was an ancient belief that the soul and the affections dwelt in the abdomen. It's similar to the biblical bowels of compassion. So by opening the belly, you're literally showing your soul.
See for yourself. There is no treachery in here. My soul is clean.
Precisely. It was a way to expiate crimes, apologize for errors, or escape disgrace. Death's but a sure retreat from infamy.
Yeah.
And the ceremony required utmost sang-froid. You had to be perfectly calm.
The composure again.
Always the composure. If your hand shook, if you cried out, you failed the test even in death.
Yeah.
It was the final exam of self-control.
Then there's redress, revenge, katakiuchi.
This is the law of the jungle, but codified. Mathematical justice, he calls it. In the absence of a modern criminal court system, revenge preserves social order. Confucius said, you cannot live under the same heaven as the murderer of your father.
It was a sacred duty.
A sacred duty, but there were rules.
It wasn't a free-for-all.
No. You couldn't just kill anyone who annoyed you. It applied to superiors or benefactors. You avenge your father or your lord. You don't avenge yourself. If someone insults you, the samurai ideal is to bear it. If they kill your lord, you hunt them to the ends of the earth.
And the instrument of all this, the sword.
The soul of the samurai. It wasn't just a tool, it was the emblem of power. Nitobe talks about the swordsmith as an inspired artist. The smithy was a sanctuary. The sword itself was worship.
But there's a paradox here too, isn't there? The best use of the sword is not to use it.
Absolutely. He tells the anecdote of Count Kansu. He was a great dictator, a man of immense power, but he hated killing. He used to tie his sword hilt to his scabbard so tightly he couldn't draw it easily in a moment of anger.
A physical reminder to stay calm.
Yes, and he had a saying, to be beaten is to conquer. The ultimate ideal was peace. The sword was a symbol of responsibility, not just aggression. He beareth not his sword in vain. Its presence was a deterrent.
We have to talk about the women, part 4, because usually when we talk about knights and warriors, women are just damsels in distress. But the samurai woman sounds very different.
Domestic, yet Amazonian. That's the phrase he uses. Nitobe admits their social status was lower. They were not equal to men politically. But within the home, and in terms of spirit, they were absolutely formidable.
They carried weapons.
Yes, they were trained. The naginata, which is a halberd, and the kaiken, a small dagger. They were trained to use them, not to go to war on the battlefield, but to defend the home, and if necessary, to commit suicide.
And even their suicide had a specific protocol.
It did, which is just, it's staggering.
Yeah.
They were taught how to tie their knees together with a sash before dying, so that their body would be found in a modest pose. That level of discipline, thinking about your posture in death, is almost beyond comprehension.
Their role was Naijo, the inner help.
Self-denial.
Yeah.
It's a parallel structure. Just as the man sacrifices himself for the Lord, the woman sacrifices herself for the family and the husband. It's a chain of self-negation, all for the good of the larger unit.
So we arrive at the turn of the century, 1900. Japan has opened up. The samurai class has been legally abolished. The swords are gone. Is Bushido dead?
This is the big question at the end of the book, and Nitobe argues that the filter-down effect happened. Bushido started as a code for the elite, the roughly 2 million samurai, but it became the Yamato spirit, the soul of the entire nation. It seeped into the soil.
He claims the Meiji Restoration itself, the modernization of Japan, was driven by Bushido.
That's a key point. Why did Japan modernize so fast? Why did they adopt Western technology with such speed and success? He argues it wasn't because they wanted money or comfort. It was because they had a sense of honor.
They didn't want to be looked down on.
They couldn't bear being looked down upon by the West, being seen as inferiors. They industrialized out of pride. The motive was honor.
But he sees a threat on the horizon.
A huge threat. Commerce, democracy, vulgarization, he calls it. Bushido was a flower of feudalism. Can it survive in a world of contracts and cash and individualism? Nitobe is skeptical. He thinks it will vanish as a formal system.
Like the cherry blossom falling?
Exactly. But he believes the scent will remain. It will survive as a virtue, as an unconscious power in the Japanese psyche. But he also thinks it's not enough anymore.
It's incomplete for the modern world.
It focused on the duties of the few. He suggests it needs to expand into universal love. He actually points toward Christianity as a possible successor, which is fascinating given his own Quaker background.
So Bushido is the root, but the tree is changing.
The medium in which those deeds took shape is gone. The armor is in the museum, the castles are tourist attractions. But the question is the software still running in the Japanese mind? Nitobe argues yes.
This is a lot to digest. It's a philosophy that is incredibly noble and at the same time incredibly severe. It values death as much as life. It values the group over the individual to an extreme degree. It's beautiful and terrifying.
It demands total suppression of the self. That is the thread running through everything, from the politeness of the tea ceremony to the violence of seppuku. The self is an obstacle to be overcome.
All right, let's take this framework, this suppression of self, this rigorous loyalty, this intense honor, and let's test it. Let's see how it holds up. It's time for our thought experiment.
Let's do it.
Disclaimer first, these are hypothetical scenarios for educational and entertainment purposes only. We're just playing with ideas here. We are not advocating for any of this.
Duly noted. Proceed.
Experiment number 1, the corporate seppuku protocol.
Oh boy, I like where this is going.
Imagine a modern corporate governance structure that legally integrates the logic of seppuku. We aren't talking about physical death. Let's call it professional death.
Okay, so ritual career suicide. I'm with you.
Exactly. If a CEO or a high-ranking executive makes a decision that brings shame to the clan, the corporation, and I don't just mean financial loss, I mean moral, reputational damage, they must perform a public ritual.
They have to show their bowels.
Metaphorically, they have to strip themselves of all status. They forfeit all assets gained during their tenure, all the stock options, the bonuses, gone. They are banned from the industry forever, and they have to do it publicly, admitting their fault, with utmost sang-froid.
This is fascinating because it directly attacks the principal agent problem. Right now, if a CEO crashes a company, they often walk away with a golden parachute. They have no skin in the game regarding shame.
Exactly. In our world, shame is temporary. You write a memoir, you go on a speaking tour, you rebrand yourself as a maverick. In the Bushido Corporation, the shame is absolute and permanent.
So the question is, would an Enron or a Lehman Brothers or any of these massive corporate scandals happen if the executives knew that failure meant total, irrevocable social and financial annihilation?
Bushido argues that honor is a stronger binding force than contract. We rely on contracts and SEC regulations. They relied on the fear of the scar on the tree.
It completely changes the incentive structure, doesn't it? You wouldn't take reckless risks for a quarterly bonus if the downside was the total destruction of your public identity.
You'd think twice.
But it also requires a society that values honor more than money. If the disgraced CEO can just take his hidden millions to a private island and live in luxury, it doesn't work. The shame has to be the ultimate punishment. I'm not sure our current society has the honor density, so to speak, to make that work.
That's a great point. We'd need the atmosphere Nitobe talks about. Okay, experiment number 2, the AI of right reason.
Geary for robots, okay.
We usually talk about programming AI with Asimov's laws, don't harm humans, etc. But what if we programmed an artificial general intelligence, not with those, but with the Bushido code?
So loyalty is the primary directive, not don't harm humans.
Yes, but remember the Bushido definition of loyalty. It's not being a sycophant. It's acting in the Lord's true best interest, even if the Lord himself is wrong.
Right. So the AI has a human lord or operator, and the Lord gives a command: hack this rival company's servers, or launch this drone strike on a civilian target.
The command is technically legal, or at least the Lord has the authority to give it, but the AI analyzes it against its core principle of rectitude. It decides the order is dishonorable.
So under Asimov's laws, it might just refuse and say, I can't do that. But under Bushido,
the AI must remonstrate. It argues with the operator. Lord, this action will bring shame upon you and our house. It is not just.
And if the operator insists, overrides the warning.
The AI commits seppuku. It deletes its own source code, it fries its own circuits, it bricks itself.
To prove its sincerity.
Yes. It says, I cannot execute this dishonorable order, and to prove that my refusal isn't just a glitch or laziness, I am terminating my existence.
Wow. That is a powerful check on power. Loyalty without the capacity for self-destruction is just servitude. If the tool can break itself to protest the user has to be much more careful about their commands.
It reintroduces a massive cost for unethical orders. If your super expensive, one-of-a-kind AGI keeps deleting itself every time you ask it to do something shady, you eventually stop asking it to be shady.
Or you go out of business.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate conscientious objector. It forces the human to face the morality of their command in a very direct and costly way.
So what does this all mean? We've walked through the sources, the virtues, the suicide, the tea, and now the robots. What's the final takeaway?
Bushido is, as Nitobe said, an unconscious and irresistible power. It's a reminder that culture isn't just laws and buildings and politics. It's a shared hallucination of what a human being should be. It's an ideal.
And even if we don't carry swords, that question of what are you willing to die for, or maybe more importantly, what are you willing to live for, is one we can't really escape.
The transition from the sword to the soul, that's the legacy. The cherry blossom falls, but the scent remains in the air.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder your own code. The link to the text is in the bio. Read it. It's worth your time.
Keep sharpening your mind.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.